Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that everything you think you know about who a narcissist ends up with is completely wrong? What if the truth isn't about them finding someone better, but about you becoming someone stronger? Today, we're diving into a story most people never see, the truth behind the mask, the cycle they repeat, and the unexpected victory that belongs not to the narcissist, but to the one who escaped. Stay with me, because the truth you're about to hear will change the way you see everything you survived and everything you're becoming. Narcissists don't end up with their perfect match. They end up with whoever maintains their illusion the longest, and this truth reshapes the entire way we understand their relationships. Narcissists move through life wearing emotional armor, built from insecurity, fear of abandonment, and an overwhelming need for validation. They aren't searching for a partner in the way healthy people are. They aren't looking for compatibility, emotional depth, or genuine connection. They are searching for someone who can hold up a mirror that reflects the image they want to believe about themselves. Their perfect match isn't based on love. It's based on illusion. The person they choose is simply someone who feeds that illusion without questioning it. Someone who doesn't yet see the cracks in the mask. Someone who unknowingly confirms the narcissist's fantasy that they are special, superior, desired, and always right. The moment that illusion is threatened, the moment a partner starts setting boundaries, asking for accountability, or seeing inconsistencies, the narcissist begins to pull away emotionally, punish them, or replace them. Not because the relationship was wrong, but because the illusion was interrupted. This is why narcissists never end up with the strongest, most self-aware, or emotionally balanced person. Those people eventually see the truth. They outgrow the manipulation, they stop reacting, stop feeding the ego, stop supporting the performance. And once the illusion breaks, the narcissist feels exposed. So they move on to someone new, not someone better, but someone less aware of the game. In the end, the person a narcissist stays with is not chosen from the heart, they are chosen from necessity. The necessity of keeping their fragile identity alive. It's not real love they are trying to preserve, it's the illusion they cannot live without. And when you understand that narcissists choose people based on who can maintain their illusion, you begin to see why their relationships never truly evolve. Because the truth is, a narcissist does not move from one meaningful partnership to another, they move from one emotional cycle to the next. This brings us to the heart of the second keynote. They don't repeat relationships, they repeat patterns. A narcissist is not chasing love, growth, or depth. They are chasing a feeling, a fantasy, a high that comes from being idealized and admired. They want the rush of being placed on a pedestal. The thrill of being seen as extraordinary, the comfort of being validated without question. And because they want the same emotional result every time, they recreate the same emotional script with every new person. It starts with intense admiration, the kind that sweeps someone off their feet. The love bombing phase creates a dream, a perfect world made of promises and illusions. But just like before, the moment reality appears, when the new partner begins to see their humanity, their flaws, their inconsistencies, the script shifts. Devaluation begins, blame, criticism, withdrawal. The narcissist feels betrayed not because of what was done, but because the illusion they depend on is fading again. So they search for someone new, hoping the next person will keep the fantasy alive longer than the last. But they are never seeking a different story. They are only seeking a delayed ending. This is why every relationship feels eerily similar, why every partner tells stories that echo one another, why the narcissist's romantic history is a chain of repeated heartbreaks packaged as bad luck. They are not building love, they are recycling illusions. And until they confront the truth within themselves, a truth they spend their entire lives running from, the cycle will continue no matter who stands beside them. And once you see that a narcissist is not repeating relationships, but repeating the same emotional script, you begin to understand why nothing ever truly changes for them. Because at their core, they are not searching for connection, they are searching for control. And this leads us straight into the third keynote. A narcissist chooses comfort over connection and control over intimacy. This is one of the most painful truths for anyone who has loved a narcissist. While you were offering your heart, they were managing an image. While you were trying to build something real, they were trying to ensure nothing could threaten their emotional authority. Intimacy requires vulnerability, the willingness to be seen, flaws and all. But for a narcissist, vulnerability feels like danger. It exposes the cracks in their identity, the wounds they've never healed, the insecurities they work so hard to hide. So instead of choosing a partner who invites authenticity, they choose someone who makes their world safer, someone who won't challenge them, won't question them deeply, and won't disrupt the illusion they need to survive. True emotional connection asks for accountability, honesty, and reciprocity. But the narcissist's comfort lies in relationships where they can dictate the pace, structure the narrative, and maintain a predictable level of emotional power. This is why they feel threatened by strong partners, why they crumble when someone sees through their mask, why they retreat when love gets real. Love requires depth, but control requires distance. And when forced to choose, the narcissist always picks the path that keeps them protected, even it leaves the relationship empty. So the cycle continues. They chase admiration instead of intimacy, ego instead of truth, and safety instead of growth. And every new connection becomes just another place where they hide rather than heal, because they are more afraid of being known than they are of being alone. And when you realize that a narcissist always chooses control over intimacy, the next truth becomes impossible to ignore, because a relationship built on control cannot survive in the presence of someone who is awakened to their own worth. And that brings us to the fourth keynote. A narcissist never ends up with the strong, awakened person who outgrows them. Not because you weren't good enough, not because you lacked something they needed, but because your growth became the very thing that threatened the world they built. The moment you began to heal, to question, to see the patterns clearly, the dynamic shifted. You stopped accepting breadcrumbs. You stopped absorbing the blame. You stopped allowing their moods to dictate your self-esteem. And whether you realized it or not, that awakening made you someone they could no longer control. Narcissists fear strong partners because strength exposes their weakness. Confidence exposes their insecurity. Emotional intelligence reveals their emotional immaturity. When you grow, you shine light on truths they've spent a lifetime trying to bury. That light feels unbearable to them. It forces them to face the reality behind the illusion, that they cannot love the way they pretend to, cannot give what they promise, and cannot hold the power they once wielded over your heart. So instead of rising with you, they retreat from you. They seek someone who is not yet awakened, someone who still mistakes intensity for love, someone who still believes in the mask. Your evolution disqualifies you from their cycle, not because you lost value, but because you gained too much clarity. You became emotionally fluent in a language they refused to learn. You stepped out of the role they needed you to play. And once you stop participating in their script, they cannot keep you in their story. In truth, your awakening is the very thing that ensures they never end up with you, and the very thing that frees you from ever needing to return. And when you step into that awakening, when you finally rise above the chaos they kept you trapped in, something else becomes clear, something that shatters the illusion that narcissists upgrade when they move on. Because the fifth keynote reveals a truth people often struggle to believe. The narcissist's new supply is not an upgrade. It's simply a replacement for the illusion that collapsed. You were never replaced because you lacked value. You were replaced because you stopped playing the role they needed for their performance to continue. Narcissists don't seek better partners. They seek easier ones, people who haven't yet questioned the script, who still believe the grand gestures, who still fall for the charm, who still mistake flattery for love. To the outside world, the narcissist's new relationship may look perfect, exciting, or even enviable. But remember what you now understand. Narcissists do not build new connections. They recycle the same storyline. What looks like an upgrade is simply the opening scene of a movie you've already watched. The same love bombing, the same intensity, the same promises, the same emotional high that quickly melts into confusion and pain. They didn't replace you with someone better. They replaced you with someone who doesn't yet see what you eventually saw, someone who will, in time, face the same disillusionment, the same manipulation, the same cycle of idealization and devaluation. And that is why your healing is so powerful. You broke the illusion. You stepped out of their control. You moved from their fabricated world into your own truth. The new person is not living in a better reality. They are living in an earlier chapter of the same book you already finished. A narcissist doesn't upgrade. They only reset the illusion, hoping this time it lasts a little longer, never realizing the problem isn't who they choose, but who they refuse to become. And once you understand that the narcissist's so-called new beginning is nothing more than a recycled illusion, you begin to see the deeper truth behind their choices. Because the sixth keynote reveals what sits at the core of every new relationship they enter, the person a narcissist ends up with is simply someone who doesn't yet see the truth. This isn't an insult to the new partner. It's a reflection of where they are in their emotional journey. The same place you once stood, a place of hope, a place of innocence, a place where love is given openly, trust is extended easily, and red flags are mistaken for passion. Narcissists don't choose partners based on compatibility. They choose them based on emotional readiness, or rather, emotional unpreparedness. They attach themselves to people who are still willing to believe in the fantasy, who are still vulnerable to charm, who haven't yet learned how to recognize manipulation dressed as romance. The new partner is not someone better. They are someone who still thinks they're entering a love story, not a survival course. Someone who believes the sweet words, the grand gestures, the intense connection, unaware that these are tools, not truths. They don't see the subtle control. They don't see the emotional dependency forming. They don't see how quickly adoration will turn into disappointment once they begin to express needs, boundaries, or their authentic self. This is why the narcissist clings to them so tightly at first. Not because the love is deeper, but because the illusion feels safe again. The script is working again. The mask is believable again. But as time passes, the truth always surfaces. And just like you, this new person will one day start to feel the cracks, the confusion, the inconsistency, the emotional exhaustion. They don't yet see the truth, but they will, because illusions never survive forever, not with a narcissist and not with a heart that eventually starts to notice what's real and what isn't. And when you realize that the narcissist chooses people who haven't yet seen the truth, it becomes even clearer why their relationships follow the same hollow pattern. Because here lies the seventh keynote, flowing naturally from everything we've uncovered. A narcissist doesn't build partnerships. They build stages for their ego. To the outside world, it may look like a relationship. There are pictures, words, gestures, moments that mimic love. But beneath those surface-level displays, there is no shared foundation, no mutual growth, no emotional reciprocity. What the narcissist is truly constructing is not a bond, but a platform. A carefully designed space where they can perform, impress, manipulate, and receive admiration without being challenged. The new partner doesn't know this yet. They believe they are entering a partnership, a connection filled with possibility and excitement. Meanwhile, the narcissist is setting the scene, placing themselves in the spotlight, assigning roles, crafting narratives, and ensuring the other person unknowingly becomes the supporting character. Their purpose? To validate, to admire, to soothe, to applaud, not to love in a healthy, reciprocal way. And this is why the illusion feels so powerful in the beginning. The narcissist is an expert performer. They know how to build grand open, ings, dramatic entrances, emotional highs, cinematic romance. But just like any performance, it isn't sustainable. They cannot stay in character forever. Eventually, real life enters the room, and with it comes vulnerability, accountability, compromise, all the things that expose the limits of their emotional capacity. When the new partner begins needing something real, the stage lights dim. The narcissist withdraws, criticizes, or punishes, because now the script is changing, and they don't know how to act without control. This is why their relationships feel so theatrical, because they aren't built on partnership, but performance. And the moment the audience stops applauding, the narcissist starts looking for a new stage. And when you finally see that the narcissist isn't building a relationship, but constructing a stage, the next truth unfolds almost effortlessly, because every stage needs an actor who doesn't know it's a play. And this brings us into the eighth keynote. The healed person escapes, while the unhealed person becomes the new character in the same story. This may be the hardest truth to accept, yet the most liberating. The moment you began healing, the moment you recognized the script, questioned the narrative, and stopped responding to their emotional cues, you stepped off their stage. You removed yourself from the role they had cast you in, and without an actor who plays along, the performance cannot continue. Healing is the key that unlocks the exit door. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly through moments of clarity, through tears that wash away denial, through realizations that crack the illusion. Healing teaches you to see manipulation where you once saw passion, instability where you once saw intensity, and control where you once believed love lived. But while your healing frees you, the narcissist's new partner, the one saint, still unaware, still hopeful, still believing, becomes the next person to step into the storyline. Not because they are weak, but because they are not yet awakened. They are still living in the version of reality where the narcissist's charm feels magical, where attention feels like devotion, where emotional unpredictability feels like depth. They don't know yet that they've been cast into a role. They don't realize the script has already been written. They don't see the patterns repeating around them like shadows. And just like you once did, they may blame themselves when the performance inevitably changes. Your healing disqualifies you from returning to that world. Their lack of healing draws them into it. But here is the deeper truth shining beneath it all. Roles can change. Stories can end. Awakenings happen. And one day that person may also step off the stage, just as you did, choosing reality over illusion and freedom over performance. And once you understand that the unhealed person simply becomes the next character in a story already written, you begin to see the narcissist's path with painful clarity. Because while people around them are learning, awakening, healing, and eventually stepping off the stage, the narcissist remains trapped in the same performance. And that leads us to the 9th keynote. The narcissist's ending is not romantic, it's repetitive, predictable, and profoundly lonely. This is the part no one tells you when you're hurting, when you're watching them move on so quickly, when it feels like they got the happy ending and you were left with the pain. But the truth is, there is no happily ever after for a narcissist. Not because the world is cruel, but because they refuse to step into the vulnerable place where real love grows. They run from discomfort, from accountability, from self-reflection, and in doing so, they run from the very things that make relationships last. So instead of evolving, they loop. Instead of growing, they repeat. Instead of learning from each heartbreak, they recreate the same dynamics with different faces. It may look like confidence on the outside, but inside, it is the same cold emptiness, the same craving for validation, the same fear of being emotionally uncovered. They chase admiration but never connection. They collect attention but never intimacy. They gather partners but never companionship. And every time someone awakens and walks away, their inner world becomes a little more fractured, a little more fragile, a little more hollow. This is why their relationships never end with closure. They end with replacement. Not because they move forward, but because they cannot sit alone long enough to face themselves. Their ending isn't a love story, it's a loop, a closed circle that keeps spinning because they refuse the one thing that could break the pattern, confronting the truth of who they are beneath the mask. And while they remain stuck in that loop, you step into a life that finally begins to move forward. And when you finally see that the narcissist is trapped in a loop they can't escape, repeating the same painful story with new faces, something powerful shifts inside you. Because the 10th keynote reveals the truth that liberates you completely, the one who truly wins is the one who chooses healing, clarity, and self-worth over chaos. And that person is you. While the narcissist stays stuck in their endless cycle, you begin a different kind of journey, a journey of awakening. You start to understand your worth, not through someone else's validation, but through your own growth. You begin to rebuild parts of yourself that were dimmed, doubted, or dismissed. You learn to trust your intuition again, to choose peace instead of chaos, truth instead of ill, union and boundaries instead of self-betrayal. This is where your story changes in a way the narcissist never will. Because while they repeat their past, you step into your future. You evolve. You expand. You develop emotional depth, self-awareness, and inner strength. The very qualities that made you incompatible with their unchanging world. The pain you went through becomes wisdom. The confusion becomes clarity. The heartbreak becomes a doorway to your own evolution. And here is the greatest irony. The narcissist will never know this kind of victory. They will never taste the freedom that comes from looking inward, growing, healing, and transforming. They remain locked in the same emotional prison, searching for new people to distract them from the truth staring back at them. But you rise. You move forward with a heart that has learned, eyes that can see, and a soul that refuses to shrink again. You become someone who can recognize real love when it arrives, someone who no longer accepts crumbs, someone who knows the power of walking away. In the end, the narcissist ends up with another cycle, and you end up with a new life. And as we reach this moment together, I want you to take a breath and truly feel what this journey has revealed. Not about the narcissist, but about you. Because the real story, the real transformation, the real power has always lived in your ability to rise beyond what tried to break you. You didn't just walk away from a narcissist, you walked toward yourself, toward clarity, toward strength, toward a life built on truth instead of illusion. And that is a triumph they will never be able to take from you. The narcissists may continue their cycles, repeating the same patterns with new faces, living inside a loop that never leads to growth. But you stepped out of that loop. You chose healing when staying would have been easier. You chose self-worth when confusion tried to convince you otherwise. You chose your future over their dysfunction. That choice alone makes you the victor in a story that once felt impossible to survive. And here's the part I want you to remember long after this video ends. Your healing is not just a recovery, it's a rebirth. You are not who you were when this began. You are wiser, stronger, softer in the right places, tougher in the necessary ones. You now carry a deeper understanding of love, boundaries, and your own emotional value. You have become someone who can no longer be deceived by intensity or pulled into chaos disguised as passion. So, if you ever wonder who truly ended up with the narcissist, the answer is simple. They ended up with the consequences of their own behavior, their own emptiness, their own unchanging patterns. And you ended up with freedom, with peace, with a chance to build a life that reflects who you really are. Your story is just beginning. Stay with me, because what comes next is your rise.